So next speaker is leading research and statistics on over 6,000 museums in Germany. Patricia Rahemipour is the director of the Institute for Museum Research at the Staatliche Museum Berlin. Her intervention, entitled Respecting Objects and Knowledge, some insights on how museums in Germany deal with the future of content, has no Q&A, but again, we will collect comments and questions in the chat box. So please, Patricia.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. And thanks for the nice introduction. Well, I do start because I have very limited times. I'm talking about respecting objects and knowledge, and try to give you some insights and how we do work in Germany with that. But first of all, I would like to introduce the institute I'm standing for and that I'm the director of, and to give you maybe an idea of why I'm talking. And well, let me share here we are. The Institute for Museum Research conducts research with and about museums. That is central for us. And we are a part of the National Museums in Berlin. And we are, as a non-university research institute, following the development of the museum landscape in whole Germany. And as already said, we are looking at around 7,000 museums, and we have a specialization on diverse topics and themes, which is strategic museum development, museums in time and space, objects and collections in digital spaces. We do audience development, and we do the national statistics on museums in Germany. And let me come to the insights. What makes the attitude of German museums toward objects and knowledge from colonial contexts and others may be different from other countries? It is the museum's self-image combined with a particular attitude that makes the difference, in my point of view. Let's start a little earlier. You see here the coordinate system the museums are working in. In spite of the discussion about the ICOM definition of museums, which is ongoing at least since 2019, museums still have a coordinate system in which they act. Central for museums are the collections and the caring about them, but it's also the claim of doing research, which museums in Germany since a long time seen as one of the most important tasks in their daily work. But there are a lot of museums in Germany, as mentioned. You see here, it's all around 7,000. And there are very much small players, which have on the left-hand side of the slide, you see it's more than half of the museums in Germany are very, very little. They only have up to 5,000 visitors a year. And it's very few middle and great museums that we are talking about. This composition of the German museum landscape shows that the equipment and design of the museums is very diverse. The consequence is that certainly not all museums in Germany have the equipment to conduct research. There are around 7,000 and only very few big players. But it is clear, however, that not only the 8 museums of the Leibniz Association, this is their picture, are the only ones that conduct research, even if not all museums in Germany have the research aspect in their title. But it's about attitude. In 2011, the German Wissenschaftsrat published a paper that is of great importance to the museums and is still widely cited until today. Here, for the first time, there is a talk of exhibitions in museums being as a scientific publication. For the museums themselves, this was nothing new, but many of the museums in Germany, but especially the medium and large museums, work research-based, as mentioned before. The famous 5 of museum tasks, which I showed just before, is firmly embedded in the canon of museums tasks at all. At the same time, collecting as a mission has receded somewhat into the background in recent years, and research is becoming increasingly important. What kind of research is this? It is primarily collection and object-based research, thus provenance research is done as a matter of course. It is not possible to identify a starting point here, but the fact that research plays a role here is true at least for the last 10 years. At the same time, research does not stand for itself and address a specialist community. Research at museums must be further developed and promoted. An interesting side effect of this development is, for example, the development of university museums. We just heard a talk from a very interesting university museum, which have increasingly been observed in recent years in Germany and which have included the research approach in their study collections. Research is always closely linked to exhibition and mediation. So to put it somewhat flippantly, how do I get this out on the street? With the recognition of scientific work at museums by the Wissenschaftsrat, processes were established following that, in my view, allow a certain view of objects from colonial contexts and massively changed the way they are dealt with. I'll come back to this later. Let me state two claims concerning research in museums, which follows an attitude. Research leads to credibility and trust. And here you see a slide from Colleen Dielenschneider, which was published firstly, I think, 2018. And she shows that museums are a highly credible source for information, and people trust them even more than daily newspapers, for example, or NGOs or the federal agency. The other claim is research-based exhibition is a matter of course for most of the museums in Germany. As already mentioned, research in museums is strongly focused on knowledge and research of the collections that are preserved there. Provenance research is only one example in this context. In order to keep one's own claim, one must know all objects they have or they preserve very well. Let's start with the keyword Objectbiographies, which is quite a research focus in museum studies and anthropological studies in Germany, at least since 2013. I brought an example. The German Archaeological Institute, which is located in Berlin and conducts exhibitions all over the world, follows in that case a clear strategy. They do not put any object on the website of which they don't know the whole provenance and the whole biography. This shows how collection-based institutions in Germany, not only museums, take research and responsibility for granted, that they take attitude. Following the road of research, it leads not only towards an attitude, but also to new formats and new research questions, which would not have come up without. Instead of working monocausally, museums work multidisciplinary and from different perspectives with the objects. In this context, one learns a lot. Research is changing. It is not longer object and collection centered, but tries to take multiple perspectives. This is an example of an exhibition we are doing next year. It's about 5 objects, only 5, and we have a lot of multiple focuses on the objects here. Many perspectives are more than the sum of their parts and lead to great added value. I would like to give a brief example of this. As part of an exhibition preparation for the Humboldt Forum in Berlin, researchers from different disciplines looked at a vessel from what was believed to be a kingfisher. It is decorated with a feather and can produce a sound. Natural scientists from the Museum of Natural History in Berlin looked at this vessel. They were quickly able to report back that the feather was not from a kingfisher, which was also not endemic to the identified location. The sound produced was not right either. By identifying the feather, this error could be corrected and brought new insights for both the natural sciences and ethnology. This example focuses on academic research-driven knowledge. but it's also important to de-hierarchize knowledge. Why should academic knowledge be more valuable than traditional knowledge, for example? This in turn leads to collaboration with communities and participation and sharing. Also because it is important to share the results of research with society, but most importantly, to negotiate. This brings me back to a very crucial point. With the opening of the museums in many directions, the more intense appreciation of research and the de-hierarchization of knowledge, questions arise that would not arise without it. Two examples. Intangible cultural heritage is becoming increasingly important. Sound and audio archives of the Humboldt University and the Ethnological Museum are very old, but today one works with them again more strongly. How, for example, can one enrich recorded rights or other processes by working with colleagues from the societies of origin with aspects that one did not know before? Objects were by no means all that was transported to Europe by collectors. Alexander von Humboldt, for example, brought some 3,000 herbarium specimens with him to Europe. But perhaps more important is that he also brought the knowledge about many plants to Europe. My example is the curare poison. Alexander von Humboldt in his travelogue wrote from the station of Esmeralda in detail how curare was extracted by an Indian from the freshly collected plant. This knowledge is something that will certainly have to be discussed in the debate, also in contexts of colonial objects in the future, and at the same time, a question that would never have been asked without the new forms of cooperation with, for example, source communities. New questions require new solutions. A good example is a project that the Ethnological Museum in Berlin, together with other institutions, conducts at the moment. There are various partners. The goal of the project is to create a virtual environment to foster cross-cultural and cross-disciplinary knowledge exchanges. It follows the idea of shared heritage. You can see here that there are a lot of different disciplines included into the project, not only from our institution, the Stiftung Preußischer Kulturbesitz, but also the Botanic Garden Berlin, the Museo Nacional in Brazil, and the FH Potsdam, which is a university, and also representatives from the source communities. And they wanted to bring up a digital solution and how they can conclude all the knowledge and de-hierarchized all the knowledge from all over the world together on a data platform. And it shows how they want to do it. It's shown here. Artifacts are embedded in territorial knowledge, and material culture is seen as an ecology. So there are a lot of insights and different perspectives that they include here. And with this cross-disciplinary collaboration, they see it's a key for getting to the whole information of the object. And they also translate a lot. And here you see an insight to the database, how it's going to look like. And you see, we also include the indigenous names of the objects. We also include the botanical names. So you have, you also have the collectors that are collecting those objects. So we try to have an environment which really deals with all the different perspectives you can have. It was very brief and very short, and I still hope I could give you an insight on how important the role of research is for the museums, not only to shape this attitude I was talking about towards objects and knowledge, but also for defining new concepts of working together and bringing up new perspectives to people and research questions. And I would like to thank you very much. And I just saw, because of the brief talk before me, that I forgot to give my contact details, but I'm happy to share that with you afterwards.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And we will share, if you agree, since you agree, your contact details at the chat. Indeed, there's a lot of new fields of knowledge that we've opened, and we'll definitely have more discussions in this one as well.